Hi Pips, it's Mishka here. So, the Fool and its symbolism within the RIder-Waite. What I'm going to try to achieve in this video is to give you a better context of why Fool represents the potentiality, why it's representing this everything that is have a potential to come into being. Also, why it's representing or expressing itself by the number 0, and give you a wider context. Because quite often when it comes to tarot cards, what is happening, we understand the tarot cards on purely fortune telling or divination, and we are saying, oh, the Fool, it's all about being foolish and impulsiveness and what have you. And this is a very good take, but it's on a very kind of surface level understanding of the card. And because the tarot is not only about the fortune telling, tarot is about the something more than this. Tarot is representing a knowledge that is hidden. That's why it's called occult. And to understand that occult, to understand that knowledge, we have to kind of go deeper to understand on which basis the tarot has been built upon, and on which doctrines and which philosophies, systems has been predicated. And if we're going to take the step back, and we're going to think the RIder-Waite Tarot Deck came through the Hermetic Order of Golden Dawn. And we're going to understand what the Golden Dawn is kind of representing. Of course, it was a secret society. It created the basis of modern esoteric Western occultism. It gave us Aleister Crowley, gave us the RIder-Waite, so we had the Waite and Coleman duo here, and gave us Thelema, gave us Wicca, gave us all those kind of different and ended up in Renaissance of the let's put it that way, the new wave of spiritualism built upon the Masonic principles, because people who actually started this order, they were Masons, they were Freemasons, and the Freemasons, I think, is very important to understand from where the Masons, they're taking their doctrines and their own philosophy, and everything kind of stems from ancient times. And I would say that we can look at everything from the perspective of Babylon and even before that. So the main predicators of the tarot is Kabbalah, it's Hermetic principles, and Hermetic principles we can trace back into the ancient Egypt and Greece. And on back of those we have alchemy, but mainly I would like to focus on Kabbalah here, because the Kabbalah, it's kind of predicator of tarot. And tarot is not only for divination. Tarot it has this knowledge that has been passed on by mystery schools, because before the knowledge that we have a different understanding of knowledge, and we have a different understanding of what the science is. And I think that in the simpler terms, before we have it with Kabbalah and we have it with the Hermetic principles, what they're describing, actually, they're describing the laws of nature, the laws of universe. And that's why in tarot we quite often see the cycles, and we see different cycles, we see duality, which is very prominent in both in Hermetic principles and in Kabbalah. And it's also, Kabbalah is talking about the nature of reality as well. And I think this is very important to understand. It's very important to understand that the Kabbalah and tarot within itself is representing different ways of how the energy and matter function throughout the dimension of the universe. And this is very important to understand. And if we're going to look at the Fool is representing this concept of nothingness. And that concept of nothingness we come across within both Kabbalah, because Kabbalah, when it's tried to explain the laws of universe, is also tried to address how nothing was able to give a birth to something, to a material plane that started expressing itself through different energies and functions of that energy. So this is very important to understand. And because the Fool is representing the zero, and because the Fool is representing within the Tree of Life the Sarfot called Katha. Katha is representing the potentiality, its full potential. And quite often, because I don't want to go too deep when it comes to Kabbalah, because it might need a lot of explaining and might take us out of the track here, what I want to touch upon, so I think it will be far much easier to explain. Greeks and Romans, they also had this concept of ex nihillis. And ex nihillis, that means out of nothing. So they also were wondering how something could appear out of nothing. And it's referring to creation out of nothing. So if we're going to think about Kabbalah, Kabbalah is also talking about the creation. It's talking about the emanation of consciousness or emanation of material plane. And it's talking about how this emanation is going through different paths in order to discover itself. And Kabbalah is talking about everything is kind of half-truths, or the same like in Hermetic principles, you're going to say that everything is the aspect of the duality is aspect of the same. So that is very important to understand when it comes to Fool. That is representing this creation of creation out of nothing. It's representing this idea of nothingness, and that nothingness becomes to be. It's like this nothingness is pouring into the reality. And that is the most simple terms I can presumably explain the concept of Fool. I hope that kind of gives you the better understanding of that concept. So in terms of the symbolic meaning of the Rider-Waite Fool, so let's start with the number 0, that kind of cycle back to what we discussed in terms of the Kabbalistic Kether and this concept, creation out of nothing. And basically the 0 by ancient was proclaimed as a god force, and was understood as type of energy. And because of that, because of the shape of the number 0, quite often 0 was linked with the concept of the cosmic egg, or those days quite often people are linking it with the Big Bang theory. So something came, universe came out of nothing, Big Bang theory. So that's why the 0 is kind of emphasizing this pure potential, and it's representing this continuous cycle without the end or beginning. It's kind of standing for never-ending cycle of nature, cycle of a life. And in certain terms, we can say it speaks about our ongoing learning and experience through life, because the journey never ends. You might say that the journey starts with the birth, but is that really true? Do you really come into being when you're being born? I would strongly disagree. And then when you die, is that really the journey changes? There's a big question mark as well. It's just all matter of perception. So basically, 0, it's symbolizing this unknown, It's representing eternity in this aspect. It can be representing the wholeness, the oneness, the continuing cycle. If we're going to think in terms of ancient Greece, we're going to think about the Alpha, that is representing the beginning, and Omega, that is representing the highest point. The something that has no beginning and has no end. So if we're going to go further and kind of look at the appearance of Fool, and I think there's something that's here going to be linked with the Hermetic principles and principles of gender, but I don't want to go into too much detail about this right now. But what I would like to touch upon, because in a way, Fool is opening and closing the Rider-Waite Tarot Deck. And what we're seeing here within the 0, the 4 and the 21, we see something that is very androgynous. And because the 4 himself is very androgynous. And within the 4 and the world, we have this androgynous aspects. In the 4, it's less pronounced. Within the universe, it's kind of more pronounced because we have the unity of two genders there. And over here within the 4, we have because the 4 kind of appears to be being a masculine archetype. However, I would strongly say that the hair and the face contains air of femininity over here. So it kind of gives the Fool this androgynous appearance, which symbolizes the combination, like we have it within the world, the union of both the male and female essence. So with that said, this means that the Fool does not experience the journey through the either male or female perspective. 4 is the Fool. 4 is that 0, is that wholeness, is that potential, is that everything can come into being. And because of that, the 4 might experience the reality or life or whatever it might be through perspective of both. Let's go further. So we're going to have the black staff or black stake, whichever we're going to choose to call it. So the staff might be representing the burden that each of us has to carry throughout our life. And black within the Rider-Waite, basically if we're going to think about colors and how much the symbolism or meaning behind the colors, and I think with the Rider-Waite at some point I'm going to run through the different meaning of different colors. Black is representing the unconsciousness. Black is representing the unknown. Might imply both danger as well as mystery here. Might be denoting something that we might have some inkling of, or we might have a dim perception of something. Look at the other cards within the Rider-Waite, we're going to see that, and if we also have the same black within the 6 of Swords, and I called that chap Ferryman for a very good reason. And then within the 7 of Pentacles, and another chap I called Mr. Gardener. So then let's focus on the Fool's white shirt, and the white in opposite to black, which is representing this unconscious aspect of either psyche or our consciousness. The white is representing the purity. It's symbolizing the purity of motive, innocence, the new beginnings, hope, and actually the faith. And the white shirt is showing underneath this fanciful floral tunic that the Fool is wearing. So this is representing that Fool's intentions and motives are pure, and that represents the Fool's purity of spirit. We can also speak about the clean slate over here, which might indicate the absence of intent. My grandmother was keep reminding me that about the clean slate and the purity of intention, that apparently the hell is full of people with good intentions, but this just simply sprang into my mind. So if we're going to focus on the figure pose of the Fool, so he kind of his pose is open and very welcoming. He looks like he's ready to take off. He's ready to launch actually himself into unknown. If you were going to think about his tunic, it almost looks like spread wings. That's how I see it. The Fool is gazes into the heavens, and that's from where the dreams and aspirations and imagination comes and resides. So that's why Fool is fully fixed there. It also, in these terms, this is representing the link with the highest realms of divine consciousness or the super consciousness, and that's from where the Fool's inspiration and guidance might be coming from. So the Fool is holding his chin and nose high in the air, as you can notice, and in a way this can be the sign of insecurity and arrogance. And I think you're going to notice what I'm doing here, because within the symbolism, for me and from kind of my school of thought, from where I'm coming from, everything is potential for everything. So the Fool, within its full potentiality, has the positive and negative aspects. Nothing is purely negative or purely positive. Everything has potential of everything. That it's my understanding, that is my philosophy, and that's why presumably as you're going to see me going through the cards, you're going to see very strong influence of Hermetic principles within my interpretation. But hey ho, on the end of the day, as I mentioned at the very beginning of this video, this is knowledge based on secret society of the Hermetic Order of Golden Dawn. So let's go back to the pose. So Fool is standing on the top of the mountain. This might be representing the Fool's prior achievements. Might be also standing for the sense of being in paradise or sense of being high. Sometimes the upper hand, or we can even say nirvana. And if we're going to look at the legs, and I think the poses and the figures, so it's important to note here that the codex of the hand and hand gestures, the profiles, and how the colors being used and how the figures being situated. It kind of stands from the Tarot of the Masil, and this is very important to note. If you want to kind of investigate this aspect of symbolism within the Tarot, I would strongly advise you to investigate the Tarot of the Masil, because that's from where, because the Tarot of Masil was the predecessor of the RIder-Waite, and some of the elements of that codex was incorporated into the RIder-Waite Tarot Deck. So if we're going to look at the Fool's legs, he's standing firmly on one leg and the other is in mid-motion. And this is representing the forward motion. This is representing things equally being and not being, flashing in and out of existence, kind of in certain terms, things coming into being. And the Fool is wearing the dirty yellow tights, and this is a kind of mixture of yellow and black, and yellow is representing the sun, and sun is representing it's standing for the consciousness of sun, is the source of life, and quite often is understood precisely as a source of life. So the yellow stands for the manifestation of the sun consciousness, the black for the darkness and unconsciousness. And this is, once again, duality coming into the play here. And this is in context of the forward movement. So this is a mixture of conscious choices and decision, as well of those unconsciousness drivers and urges and desires that might be pushing towards a certain things coming to being. So what this is kind of telling us that the Fool might be equally as conscious or unconscious of its own decisions and motives. And the yellow boots, once again, yellow is the sun consciousness. It's the aspect of this higher state of being. And in this particular aspect, the yellow boots, they're implying the Fool's self-confidence and belief that every step he's taking is taking it consciously. But it's kind of silly of Fool to think that, because we know that is not necessarily correct. And that is even more silly of the Fool, because even though Fool thinks, yeah, I have the self-confidence, I believe that every single step I take is conscious, poor bugger is not really paying attention to what is ahead of him. So you see, this is the play of contradictions over here. So, and then we have the ledge. And once again, I would like to stress very importantly, because we look at the cards in a certain way, and we quite often look at the cards through a prism of other people's understanding of it. And what I would strongly advise you to do, to throw it out of the window. Find your own prism, find your own understanding, find your own angle. And people, they say, oh, he's going to fall. Well, we don't know what's there. We don't know what is there. The thing is, we make an assumption, we don't know. Because the step might take him over the edge. And yes, indeed, disaster might be taking place, or simply there may be another ledge over there. We don't know. We don't see it. We don't know. And that is the beauty of looking at the tarot cards from different perspectives. Don't assume things are as they are. Nothing is what it seems to be. And please remember that. I know that kind of sounds strange, but please re-examine the cards. Have a look. And you're going to see that nothing what you see at the first glance, it is what it seems to be. Honestly. So the ledge is representing the risk, and is representing the risk taking, and is talking about this philosophy that the risks have to be taken in order to progress along in our path. So this is kind of the leap of faith. That's from the leap of faith. Leap of faith is coming from here. And actually, if we're going to think what the ledge is representing, ledge is also symbolizing the threshold, where the one's journey ends and begins. So this is kind of representing equally the beginning and the end of the journey. And I think what I can say here, because the ledge and the way how quite often we see that ledge might be also denoting the mental obstacles we create for ourselves, which might deter us from taking the next step in order to achieve and experience our dreams. So once again, this is linking into Hermetic principle of mentalism. And that is very important to understand, that everything is our perception. So the white sun, we have a white sun top corner of this card, and once again, it's just to reiterate that the sun is considered to be the most conscious cosmic body. It symbolizes the raw, life-giving force. And I think we can all agree that, life cannot be sustained without the sun. And the real color of the sun, once again, nothing is what it seems to be. The real color of the sun is white. And I'm not, because it's to do with how the light is coming through atmosphere and scatters the higher wavelengths, so on and so forth. But let's not focus on that. Let's focus on the symbolism of the white sun. So the white sun is representing the pure enlightenment. which is forever aligned and part of the Fool's journey. That is indicating the Fool's direct link with the highest force in the universe, and it's representing the Fool, meaning us, always has a clear channel of connection with the higher consciousness, always, and we're all gifted with it. The white sun that is shining behind him is illuminating his path. It's not only illuminating the Fool's path, it's also illuminating the entirety of the Fool's world. And actually, the sun is showing everything in the best possible light, and is nudging Fool to continue onwards. And symbol of sun, the Hermetic symbol of sun, is it's also the Jungian symbol of self. And what you're going to see here, that within that symbolism we see the self, the aspect of self, and we see on the aspect of self-developing consciousness. It's also representing the aspect of the free will, personal growth, and individual consciousness. And together, the sun and with the white rose and the white dog might represent, because the aspect of white is representing this pureness, is representing this clean slate, is representing naivety, is representing mind going blank. Those elements within this kind of setting, they're representing the liberty, representing freedom, but also representing the liberty and freedom from attachment and lack of any preconceived conceptions. The red feather denotes Fool's life force. It denotes his vitality, strength, and potential. Represent the flame of life. This is the entirety of the concept of the breath of life and the flame of life. But basically, it shows liveliness, and it's representing our soul, or we can say it's representing the person's soul and heart. The red is also representing the blood and the life force. Basically, it's a life force, like I said at the very beginning. And the red feather symbol can be also found in two other tarot cards. Within the RIder-Waite, and within the RIder-Waite we can find it in the sun as well as death. And then if we're going to go further, we have a bundle, and bundle is kind of denoting or marks the Fool's worldly possessions, and they're wrapped up in a small sack tied on the back of his black staff, and the black stick, whatever we choose to call it, it's representing this. It's almost representing this unconscious understanding that we have already everything that we need, but we're going to venture into the big world to find all those things that we already have within us. So basically, when people say, and when we have this concept about everything that we need is already within us, the Fool is representing this hero journey to discover that everything that he went to look for was already within him. So yeah, this is representing this bundle, is representing his essentials. Is representing the 4 talismans, is representing the 4 elements that we're going to see within the magician, and it's representing the minor arcana. But the Fool is very much unaware of his own wealth and his own potential and his own abilities. And basically, this is representing the bundle is kind of standing for something that is not being recognized, like latent talent, something that hasn't been recognized. So the white rose, there are 2 elements of white rose that I would like to touch upon. First of all, I want to touch upon the fact of that white rose, yes, in terms of symbolic meaning, might be representing might be representing and conveying the color of purity, balance, virtue, innocence. Is a promise of new beginnings, hope, and is quite often denoting this idea of the best is yet to come. And we can see the symbolism of the white rose also within the death. But also I'd like to mention another aspect, because if we're going to think that this has been predicated, the entirety of the tarot has been predicated on the notions of Freemasonry here as well. Rose is representing the structural beauty. Rose is representing the beautiful design, and beautiful design has a creator. So this is once again, this is implicating there is a beautiful design, and we are part of this beautiful design, and that beautiful design has its own creator. And I think that's a very important element to highlight here. In terms of clothing, the Fool is dressed in very fanciful, some could say actually extravagant, brightly patterned clothing. The sleeves, they look like wings, and they're burnt orange. But orange in general is a color of it's a polarizing color, because it can might symbolize the negative emotions such as selfishness, pride, and aggression. And on the other hand, is representing the divine vision and creativity. If we're going to see where the Fool is and how he's being dressed, so he doesn't seem to be dressed for occasion. He doesn't seem to be dressed in suitable manner or in appropriate manner, and actually he's just himself. He doesn't really care, does he? So because he's not dressed appropriately for occasion, because if you're going to think, he ventured into the and there's a long journey apparently ahead of him. He's not very well equipped for this journey, isn't he? He hasn't thought it through. So that's why sometimes this is being interpreted as a being madman. But also we can interpret it as somebody who's being carefree, very flamboyant, someone who is superficial, relaxed and open in terms of his or her attitude. And also this might be showing or representing or standing for ability to live day by day without worrying about the future. Another important aspect within this card is the horizon. Horizon is the realm of possible, represents the lofty borders between the realms and the highest borders between the heaven and earth. So it's representing this kind of point where the two realms, they come together. Another aspect, there are mountains. Mountains quite often indicate a spiritual or mental rising or improvement. They represent the higher realms of consciousness. That's why we have that horizon there coming and feeding into that concept as well. The higher the mountain, the higher realm of consciousness, basically. The highest mountain's peaks symbolize the highest realm of consciousness that we can experience while still on Earth. And even though the Fool stands on the top of the highest mountain, there are much higher mountains in distance. So these higher mountains remind the Fool that there are still more journeys and higher realms of consciousness to be explored, experienced, and to be conquered. And mountains, at the same time, even though they can represent this highest realm of consciousness, in another aspect they represent the obstacles, and something that we have to climb over and pass through. So this is representing the overcoming of obstacles and making progress. In other words, and the Fool has to conquer those mountains for him to continue to follow on his dream, to follow his aspirations, to reach the highest and ultimate peak, the enlightenment. The white dog, I love the white dog. It's one of my favorite symbolic aspects over here, because the white dog is the companion. And actually we don't know what the white dog is actually doing, because equally we can say that this white dog is Okay, let's start from the beginning. So let's say that the dog is representing the instinct and self-preservation. Let's take it from that. We can say that Sim is a symbol of loyalty, trust, and protection and companionship. We can also say that the dog, in its ultimate nature, is representing, or might be suggesting rather, the warning against the danger. The white, if we're going to think about that, the white is the color white is denoting the balance, virtue, innocence, and childlike behavior. And the dog, like I said, for me, everything has dual meaning, and we cannot really say what this dog is doing. So maybe dog is saying, "Hey, you better don't go where you're going," or maybe merely try to join in the fun. We don't know. We don't know, because nothing is what it seems to be, honestly, because we don't know. We don't know if he's going to fall off that edge. It's assumption that he will. He might simply step into another ledge. He's not even looking. We don't know that. The dog equally might be extremely playful. Equally, dog might be annoying him, and actually dog might be trying to nip him. We don't know that. So that's why I would say that on one hand, the dog's behavior and body language might indicate the fun and excitement. And basically, dog might be saying, well, I'm quite happy to do whatever you're doing. Almost like saying, I'll go wherever you go. And, they kind of appear to be walking in step with each other. So the fool is kind of walking in step with his own instinct and self-preservation, and his kind of animal, because that might be representing the instinct, but also the dog is representing the instinct that is guiding us, but also sometimes the instinct that is driving us to explore things they are out of our bound as well. But for other hand, the dog might be frantically trying to attempt to get full attention, to draw full attention against the danger at his feet, and we don't know that. So I would always try to leave it open. I hope that gives you a better overview when it comes to the symbolism behind the Rider-Waite's Fool. Please let me know what your thoughts are. And until the next time.